The Macabre World podcast is brought to you by Darker Art Studio, home of real human bone jewelry. Stock and custom pieces are available, so visit us on the web at www.darkerartstudio.com and show them your darker art side. Macabre World, a podcast from Darker Art Studio, where we explore the dark, strange, and unusual from this world and beyond. Hello and welcome to the Macabre World podcast. I am your host, Rocky Digati, and with me today is Will Rodriguez and Karen Endsley from the Skeptic Metaphysician podcast. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thrilled to be here.
Oh, well, it's wonderful to have you. Now, tell us a little bit about your podcast and what your platform is.
Karen.
Well, this was your baby. I think you should start it.
Okay, fine. I always do it, but fine. So Skeptic Metaphysician, it's really it's meant to be a jump on point for people who might be interested in this stuff, but don't know where to start or don't know if they're 100% on board with a lot of the woo stuff out there.
They're curious, but they don't want to feel weird.
Yeah, right. I remember the first time I was looking into this stuff, I walked into a metaphysical bookstore and felt like the stupidest man in the world because I didn't know where to start. I didn't know who to ask. I saw a lot of books, a lot of crystals, a lot of stuff, and I didn't know what the heck they were all about. So but
it always smells nice.
It does. It does.
That
Sometimes I walk in
champa.
sometimes just so I can smell it because I miss it. I
We're
try
gonna
to
get
burn
you some
incense in the house,
champa.
but Karen does not have it. No.
It's because you're trying to cover up smells.
Yeah.
Well, there is a lot out there, and I think that businesses that are catering to that element, and so I guess we'll call it like curious. I don't know.
I love that.
In this day and age,
That's awesome.
yes, I think we need to take that. And
That needs to be a T-shirt.
yes,
Curious. Because
Yes.
there's so many TV shows now. I mean, I told you guys just offline briefly, and folks who listen to my podcast know that way back in the day, before there were any ghost hunter shows, I was actually a member of TAPS. I'm from Rhode Island, and I used to go when we met in a little Starbucks in Warwick. And so, there was a time where this was just small independent groups doing all these, little ghost investigations and basically Q hacking their own gadgetry. Now it's a big business.
Mhm.
And I think with that, so have become mediums, psychics. We have TV shows with the lady in Long Island, somebody else on another planet over there. And there's lots and lots. There's even historians. I interviewed in my first season, Suzanne Munson, who wrote a book through a medium interviewing Thomas Jefferson. And this is an academic lady. So these are not, it used to be, can we be honest? It used to be what? Kooks and crackpots.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
the weirdos.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a bunch of wingnuts
Everybody.
and Rama Lama Ding Dongs, and they were all. That's what my dad used to call.
Is that
Don't
Ram
write me
Dass?
letters. Don't write me letters, people. Do not write me letters about that. And it used to be a fringe thing. It is now mainstream. We have entire networks devoted 24-hour programming with every possible thing. Where does somebody start if this is something new to them? I mean, we have lots of podcasts. We have we're overstimulated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No doubt. So to answer your question as to where people start, skepticmetaphysician.com.
There it is. Yes.
Where your toe dip.
Yeah, no, that's exactly why we created the show, is because there's so much stuff out there. Where do you even know how to start? Like where to start?
And the more we do it, the more there is. It's like this exponential growth. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and more.
Yeah, I like to joke that this stuff is like consciousness that's always expanding. All this information is constantly expanding. Just when you think you wrapped your arms around the whole thing, suddenly you realize, oh, what's under this rock? Oh my God.
Yeah.
I should not have lifted that rock up. But yeah, you're right. There's so much. And with that, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? There's some great stuff because now this stuff becomes more mainstream, more
accessible.
Selfishly, it's for the good of all of us, right? But at the same time, it brings out the charlatans like crazy, people who are opportunists and they're trying to take advantage of people, unfortunately.
I don't mean to malign the legitimate business of life coach and whatnot, even though that I'm not really sure I understand what that is. And because but it seems like there's a number of, and I'm just going to use some of the phrases, coaches, counselors, healers with no distinguishable educational background that would be clinically, accredited, I guess is the word I want. Outside of this, out in the real world, I'm a retired 911 ambulance medic. And I also currently work in the tech area of the medical field. So having certifications, accreditations is very, very important. And there's lots of people who are, I was going to say blowing smoke up their ass, but you know what? They're technically just sort of fanning it around in their face. But there's a lot of that going on. Now, I am hugely interested in like some of the things you found out. Like complementary medicine is a big part of the medical field. People who are going through intensive medical treatment, such as chemotherapy, and many of the find that things that there's a lot of Eastern medicine, a lot of herbal, a lot of acupuncture, a lot of practices, yoga that are very, very, very beneficial. And in no way am I saying that's hooey. I'm just saying there seems to be an awful lot of other stuff now. And how on earth does somebody, not get taken for a ride?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I think your point of having credentials is important. I follow a lady, she seems awfully nice on social media, who does all kinds of healing recordings, and people can buy her recordings for $60 or whatever, and they have it forever. And she really talks about healing from your soul. And I mean, she seems like a lovely young lady. But then one of her posts mentioned the fact that she's never read a metaphysical or spiritual book or any kind of books. All of this stuff that comes from herself, like she's channeled all this stuff. And though I applaud people who can channel, because I certainly cannot, but if you can truly channel information that is legit, then that's wonderful. But I would be averse to going to someone who hasn't bothered to study at all what's out there and is just making shit up. I mean, my apologies, but that's all I can think of is it's the creative mind in her that's bringing stuff out and saying, hey, this is going to heal you. Well,
see, I find that dangerous.
But how do you know that it's not real, Bill?
No, I don't, but I'd be afraid to try it, because what if it fucks me up? Excuse my language, but
no, it's fine. We throw that around.
Right?
We're a casual crew.
But at least if she had studied some of the masters and said, okay, I see this, and put some of them together and created her own out of it, I can understand that. But this is untried, untrue. I just don't.
But they all were at first, right? And just because you study a master doesn't necessarily mean you're going to agree with them.
Yeah. See, this is the dynamic on the show all the time, right? I'm the one who's saying poo poo naysayer, and she's like, but wait, right?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say you're right, Karen. But if the question was, how does someone discern between one or the other? Well, I would probably say start with someone who has credentials. I think we both interviewed Bob Ginsberg, who has that
terrific human,
that wonderful organization that certifies
the Forever
mediums.
Family. Yep.
Right. Certifies mediums. At least there's a body who is trying to put people to a test to see whether these folks are doing what they say that they're doing. So there's a semblance of trust that goes here. But if someone just, hey, social media says, I can heal you. Oh, really? Well, what have you studied? How do you know? What do you know? I don't find a lot of faith in that, a lot of trust in that, right? At least not right now.
See, I would go more by word of mouth, I think. It's someone that I know or know of that has had some results or had some experience with this person that I can kind of trust.
But what if you want it and you don't know anybody who's done this? Where do you go? Where do you turn?
Well, you do like a spreadsheet. You compare them all. What are these people charging and what am I getting? I don't know. That's hard because really with this, you really can't prove any of it.
It just seems like so much work,
Yeah. And the other thing I think is, and you mentioned the charging. I don't think there's anything wrong with someone, and I do this myself. I'm a professional tarot reader. I charge for a nominal fee for the amount of time, and I'm charging you for my time. I make no claims of being a medium. I merely spread and interpret cards. Anything else that happens, if I feel that I'm getting a connection or whatever, or if sometimes I've had readings where people have been convinced that someone else was speaking through, or all that kind of stuff, or this was all very, very much touched by spirit, which is awesome. I don't guarantee that. I charge a very small fee because it is a very small amount of time, and it is charging just for my time.
Sure.
And people seem to get a lot out of it. I've been reading for, oh my God, 30 some years now. So, and I have established clients. There is word of mouth and everything. But when I see that some mediums charge hundreds of dollars, that's a lot. And that's especially when I think how vulnerable people are, especially in the grieving state.
Yeah. And there's a whole conversation going on online right now about the ethics behind charging people for stuff like that. Like you say, you do a nominal fee for your time, which makes perfect sense. What you do is very, very different from what this other young lady says, which is she will heal you, right? There's I think the intrinsic danger in that is what scares me the most about, I've got cancer, she's going to heal me, woo, that kind of thing, right? But the ethics, the conversation about the ethics about paying for gifts such as healing and things like that is heating up, because there's so many people that are charging outrageous amounts of money for these types of services that, I mean, may or may not be real, right? Let's just call it the way it is. There is something to be said about charging something for your time. You value your time accordingly, and you make a living doing something, helping others. Something quite different to say, I'm going to charge you exponentially more than any other person that would do this because I'm just that good.
You better not cost more than a lawyer.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
This is my litmus test. A great psychic should cost a lot less than a shitty lawyer.
Yeah, because after they tell you something wrong, you're gonna have to pay the lawyer to go after the psychic.
Right. Well, I mean, and I say that glibly, but to the point where I've had clients. I had a client come to me a couple of years back, and it was her first time reading with me, and we had a very nice, lovely chat. And she felt that I helped her out. And then she had said, well, the lady I'd been going to, she asked once she charges, and she charged more, but that still wasn't crazy. And she's like, well, then I had to get this doll from her for $500. And then she had to recharge it for $200 because of she had preyed upon her insecurities. She had preyed upon a lot of her anxieties, and created sort of what I'll call like a curse, kind of the faux curse, scam.
Yeah, but that's been going on for a while too.
Oh,
though.
God,
I remember when I was a kid, my grandmother took me to some guy down in Miami who ran this egg around for me, and then broke the egg open, and the egg was all rotten, and said, "Oh, you've got something, a curse. You need to come back to me every day for the next 15 days, and we need to do this thing." And it was weird. But now the modern version of it is, I don't know if you've gotten these on Instagram and Facebook, Grand Rising, I felt a calling to give you a reading. And inevitably, it's one of these rabbit holes that, oh yeah, there's something bad coming up. For $15 more, I'll identify the source of the curse that you have on you. And once she identifies it, oh, now for another $700, I'll take the curse away. But then, like you said, you got to come back and get a
recharge
refresher.
it. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. And I used to say it was, I call it, I guess Portuguese is the other white meat, because I used to say we were Latin because we were Iberian. Apparently we are not. I learned this. It was a little funny anthropology thing I learned, but the herbal cures and all of that. My grandmother was a curandera, so it was
Cool.
a thing, yeah.
Mhm.
But she did like hard medicine. She grew herbs, she made medicines. I have the book from the 1800s that her family used for the
Wow.
recipes, and I've
Mhm.
compared them with stuff I've taken, that I've learned about since. And I've taken correspondence courses for my own edification on herbalism and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And it's tried and true, and
Yeah.
it's really cool stuff. And she did weird things with eggs and bones and stuff, just because
Yeah. I mean, people
old
don't know
school.
that's witchcraft. That
It really
herbology and all that
is.
stuff. That's witchcraft. That's what Wicca is all about. People are afraid it's Satanists or whatever. It has nothing to do with that at all.
Well, I mean, not to here we go. Let's drag the controversy out and just
Let's
give it
do
a
it.
hat. Let's give it a hat. I was having a conversation with someone the other day who grew up Protestant and who wasn't really particularly religious, and said something about the Catholic Mass. I said, you do realize that one of the grave differences between Protestantism and Catholicism is during the consecration part of the Mass. Because if you go to an Episcopal church, it's like Catholic light, all the redemption, half the guilt. But
I heard that.
but if you go to a Catholic Mass, I said the one of the fundamental differences is that Catholics believe that at the point of the consecration in the Mass, that is no longer a symbolic wafer, symbolic wine. It is actually body and blood.
Mm.
It is real. I said, and if that doesn't tell me that that's a full ritual spell and everything, I said, it's exactly what it is.
Sure.
It just wasn't dressed up that way when they taught it to me.
I mean, if we're going to go down the controversy hole, then let's talk about what we just went through during the holidays, right? In Christmas time.
Again.
I mean, you wind me up and here I go, right? 9 times out of 10, all the Christian or Catholic rituals are all pagan. A
Sure.
Christmas tree that you just had in your house is a pagan ritual. Even the fact of the December 25th being the birth of Christ, that's not the case. That's actually Pope Constantine wanted to bring in the pagans, the country dwellers in, so he made his birth be around winter solstice, which is a pagan holiday. I mean, they appropriated so much of the pagan culture just to appease them so they can bring them to the church that people don't even realize. The Easter Bunny, haha. Sorry.
Well, there was no chocolate. Weren't they at the crucifixion? Just checking.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they were there for sure. Yeah, but it's a Astera, right? It's a fertility holiday.
Gee, if you were going to make Astera an English word, what would it sound like?
Right.
Would it sound like Easter?
Right.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
It is crazy, and I always love, and I think this is like one of the zaniest parts of human nature. Everybody loves to think that their way is smarter than somebody else's.
Mm-hmm.
So, so with that, I think that's where all this derision and copying and revamping comes from, because
and I think that's kind of a hallmark of our show, because we always talk about the fact that everyone is saying the exact same thing. They're just using different words for it. Mm-hmm. And the important thing is to understand that and know that my path is not going to be the same path as yours. It's just not. We're all individuals. It's important to be on a path, but doesn't mean you have to be on mine. In fact, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be mine. There's a story that I read the other day about the Knights of the Round Table, and they're trying to find the Grail, and they're going into the woods, and they went in one after the other, followed themselves in the same path through the woods, and as they were going through the same path, they're all going one behind the other. Just 5 yards down to the right was the Grail sitting there, but they missed it because they were all going in the same line. Instead, had they gone through a different path, they each had taken a different path, they would have run into it. But instead, they chose to go down the same path altogether. So that moral of the story is that it points out the importance of everyone following a different path for us to all eventually come to the quote unquote truth, right? I've got lots of stories I should probably not go into one, but
Well, that, and everybody knows that Percival doesn't have a sense of direction. But I'm a big Arthur nerd. So
okay. So then you've heard the story before.
yes, and it makes some sense, but there's so many paths. Like I grew up ridiculously Catholic, like the kind of Catholic that hurts. And then as I got older, it never gelled with me. I was one of those, a people pleaser, but I mean, once it became my path, it was not that. And I don't actually feel I have a path per se that can be organized or typecast. I think everybody's got a little bit of the right idea. And I think that I embrace spirituality on a whole, and I look at it like it's your face. Everybody's got eyes, nose, mouth, but we all look different. So right. I think spirituality can be composed of a lot of the same components, but we all kind of got our own way of doing it.
And it's such a personal thing. How can anybody really decide for anybody else? I mean, I have a degree in anthropology, and I studied world religions, and I grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school and did all of that. And there's some of it, I've kept little bits and pieces of everything that I've learned and kind of forged my own way like you. And I think that's kind of ultimately the best way for everyone, because I mean, no one knows what's inside your head or what you need or what's going to connect with you or click with you. You just kind of have to figure it out on your own.
I too wore the plaid.
Yeah. Yep. The skirt, the jumper.
I too wore the plaid.
Full disclosure, I went to Catholic school for 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And they said, get out of here.
Yeah, but you went to that whole retreat thing too.
Yeah. I've had some encounters. Let's put it that way.
I don't know if we're of an age, but in the 80s, there was like the charismatic Catholic movement. And they were funneling us kids into that in the big way because it was new and kooky and crazy. And, it was on the heels of the folk mass. They had to kind of come up with another way to relate to teenagers. And it was sort of using the elements of what I now know to be like sort of like the Pentecostal kind of worship. They were trying, the most, staid religion that we knew was trying to like bump it up revival style. And it was weird.
Did they call it?
Everybody was unsettled about it.
Yeah. Did they call it an Emmaus weekend?
We had Wow.
Oh, the name okay.
Walk on Water.
Oh wow.
Yes, they did go there.
Yes, they were the Wow movement, and it was full of, like I said, the kind of retreat sort of things that'll make a Will Ferrell movie someday, but it's just like him and Molly Shannon were great. But it was they were trying to make it appeal to young people, and they were going into all that stuff. So there was a lot of elements that they were even borrowing. I think some people were quote unquote slain in the spirit, I believe was one of the things, because my mom went a couple of times, then she came back, she goes, you know what, I don't think this charismatic thing is for me. My mom barely got over Vatican II. Okay. She's I think to this day, even though she won't eat a hot dog on Friday. She's 94 years old. She knows she doesn't even have to follow the rule anymore because she kind of outgrew it. She's lived long enough that she can do what she wants, but she's no.
I mean, it does. It takes a while to deprogram you, right?
Guilt.
I still feel guilty sometimes, right? Absolutely. We've been kind of disparaging Catholicism, right? Christianity. We need to.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up Catholic on a beach town, so we were like beach Catholics. It was pretty laid back.
Yeah,
it was a good experience for me.
And that's what
it just wasn't my way.
And that's what I want to say. Some people, the Catholic way is perfect for them, and for that, I applaud them. I support them. I am happy that they found their way. It's not mine at all. And I don't mean to disparage it, but because like we were just talking, who are we to say that one path is better than another?
Right.
But it's not the path itself. Sometimes it's the people that are running the path that you need to be careful of.
And sometimes that path goes where it shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's I do have a tremendous respect for my mom, who at 94, by the way, would still have something to say. I taught her how to find the podcast, by the way, on Alexa, so I'm going to be in trouble now.
Oh boy. Sorry, Mom.
Sorry, Mom. But sorry, mi so linda. She won't, she will not. She'll be, yeah. But the thing is that and I don't have a problem with anybody's path. I have friends of pretty much every flavor. As far as if you want to talk spirituality, from absolutely none and you can't convince me it exists, to some people who've gone way over in the spectrum. I have friends who are nuns, and we're still friends, and we went because we grew up together, we talked, and there is something to it all. I think one of the greatest things, and maybe I'll redeem myself, that I think I learned growing up that way, was I think I call it the offer it up. I think there's something to be said for finding a way to to use your, to feed your spirit by giving and sacrifice. I think there's a nobility if you go without for the greater, for a greater spiritual gain. That is not a terrible thing to glean, to do something like that.
Once you realize that there's just so much more, there's something so much bigger than yourself. I mean, that's part of it. It makes that sacrifice so much easier, or not even seem like a sacrifice.
It almost seems like an honor, to do that. And I think that is a terrific concept, and it is very prevalent. And I'm also hoping plenary indulgence is real, but
why not? It's a good path.
It's a great path. It's a great. Kevin Smith, in his movie Dogma, actually caught a lot of flack initially. And can we both add him as like a dream guest on our podcast?
Absolutely. For myriad reasons. I'm also a huge comic book nerd.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Great. But yeah, he caught a lot of flack for that. And he said, he says, I'm a devout Catholic. He says, I didn't make fun of the church. He says, everything that I put in there spiritually in that movie supports and celebrates what I was taught. And I think presentation is everything, which brings us kind of full circle. And we were talking about, it's all on TV now. And like, I'm not going to go into I think this one's real, I think this one's not, I think this is that. But if anyone listening can look up anything, it's called cold reading, Barnum statements, and things like that, and then evaluate some of the people they see in the media doing some of these things, I think they'd have a big eye opener.
Yeah, there's no question. I think, as with everything, you need to go into it with a discerning mind. You can't just believe things offhand simply because you want to. In our show, our show intro talks about like how Karen and I are like Mulder and Scully, but the difference is that we both want to believe. We went down this path because I desperately needed to find something that could give me proof that this stuff was real, that we are more than just this bodies that we inhabit. So I was desperate to find something that I could believe, but I couldn't just believe it outright because I was raised a certain way and I didn't want to be looked at as foolish or naive or someone who can be taken advantage of. So I kind of put some people through the ringer a little bit when I was younger, trying to figure out, are you real or are you just full of shit? But I gotta say, having done the show now for just about 2 years, right, Karen? We've been doing the show for about 2 years. We found so far that the people who are legit, or at least are genuine, far, far outnumber those that are not. At least that we found. Maybe because they know we vet them before they come on the show. I don't know. Or maybe they're afraid that we're going to call them out on the show. But I think there's really the only ones that we found that are not legit or feel disingenuous are those ones that reach out to us on social media and immediately ask us to let them give us a reading. That's when we say, nope, this is not right. But we're learning a lot. Yeah. We're learning a lot from a lot of people, and learning that really, for the most part, everybody in this space that we have encountered is actually in it for the right reasons.
Everybody wants to help.
Yeah.
Just build the community, spread the love, share the energy, and just help bring everyone's vibrations to a higher level.
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions, if they're listening, they have any questions as to, who should I trust? If you want to experience Reiki, you want to experience a medium, or you want to do breath work or whatever, we are happy to send a referral, because we're only going to talk to people on our show that we feel, and if we feel that they're not genuine, we'll call it out on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And they can find you, also to reiterate, at skepticmetaphysician.com, at Skeptic Metaphysician on Facebook, and at Skeptic Metaphysician Podcast on the Insta. And I'm sure all your social media links are on the website as well. And they're able to contact you through there if they had questions like that.
Absolutely. The website is a one-stop shop for everything. You can reach us there. You can leave us voicemails. You can send us emails. You can subscribe to the show directly on the site. It's everything you need is right there.
We've got a great newsletter, and if you sign up for it, some of our guests will even give out discounts to some of their services. So
that's
a
awesome.
good resource. Yeah.
So has anybody convinced you? Have you had moments?
A lot of them.
Yes. Yes.
Share. Tell.
So when we first started the show, obviously I started the show by myself. I called myself the Skeptic Metaphysician because I, like I said, needed proof. And when Karen came on, really the lights went on, because now suddenly we had someone that was open to this stuff. So then stuff started happening, right? Things that I was closed off to. Now,
so in this scenario, you're Scully.
Yeah, you could say that. I was Scully. But over the course of the last 2 years now, suddenly we've talked about maybe rebranding the show, because I'm not really a skeptic anymore. But instead, we find that the Skeptic Metaphysician now is our audience. So it's our goal to help the Skeptic Metaphysician cross into the, I don't want to say believer, but at least be open to the fact that, there's stuff out there that I can't explain. Maybe it's real.
Curious.
I love that so much. How much do you want? How much? I need the rights to that.
You heard it here first, people. Just quote me and link me. Okay.
Got it. You got it. Absolutely.
Curious. But can either or both of you share something that maybe was a convincing moment?
We spoke with a channeler, and so before the interview, kind of like you kind of gave the spiel. This is what's going to happen, blah blah blah,
right? And
then you start recording. So before we started recording, she said, "Karen, your grandmother's here," and I was like, okay." And I didn't tell her anything about me. I didn't ask any questions. I said, well, that's great. Okay, let's get to the interview. So we do the interview talking about her, what she does, how she does it, her experiences. And then we wrap up. It was a really good interview. And then Will, after we're finished recording, Will says, is her grandmother still here? And she's like, yeah, she's here. And she described a woman that did not look at all like either one of my grandmothers. But then she said something to me that instantly I started crying. So let me back up a little bit. You can't really see in here, but I paint my nails kind of a funky way. I have them done. It's called Half Moon.
That was popular in the 40s. My mom used that.
And then again in like the 60s. Well, when I was a little girl, my grandmother from Ecuador used to do her nails like that. So I kind of have done it for like the last 10 years. I always do this as kind of a tribute to my grandmother. Well, you see these interviews. I mean, you don't see my hands unless I hold them up like that, which I never do.
Right.
And, so she describes this woman who does not sound like my grandmother. And then she said, but she wants you to know she likes your nails. And the waterworks came.
Wow.
Because I hadn't said anything to her about anything, and she hadn't seen my hands. And that's such a weirdly specific thing to say.
That is.
So I'm like, all right.
Yeah. And then for me, it came from one of the craziest interviews that we had. We had a guy who started the conversation by saying he was the light. Yes. So that everything that died, everything that died went through him to get to the afterlife. Right? That was an interesting interview in and of itself. But before we started interviewing, he says, by the way, there's someone, there's an old lady standing behind you. And he described her and said she's here to guide you, to protect you. And I had to pause because I'm Cuban, of Cuban descent. So and when people think of Cubans, they don't think of what my grandmother looked like. My grandmother was blonde and had green eyes and very fair skin. People can't see us now, but if you could see me, I've got dark hair and I've got darker complexion.
Brown eyes.
And I'm outing myself here for future, but at the time, no one knew that I had a grandmother that was green hair and I'm green hair.
I didn't know that either.
I mean, what grandmother doesn't have green hair these days, right?
Yeah.
No,
True.
blonde hair and green eyes. No one knew that. No one knew I was Cuban. Really, I don't really talk about it. But he said to me, "This lady is got blonde hair and green eyes, and she's got a little bit of a hunchback. And God damn it, if that's not exactly what my grandmother looked like." And he had no way of knowing that this was, I mean, again, super, super specific. But Karen, the one I really think you should talk about is breath work.
What is breath work? It sounds like breathing, which I can do.
It is. Yes. Yeah.
Just say it.
Yeah.
So I have, for the longest, I'm not like a super meditator person. I try to, I'm getting better at it, but for the longest time.
Oh, I suck at it. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I stink.
So
You
She
can't do it
says
with
that,
one.
but she sits down to meditate and she's in a trance in like 2 seconds.
Oh, please.
now
I can't.
fight.
It took a while.
I had to fight for an hour for me to even get even close. But
Oh, I'm nowhere near. If you can't do it with one eye open staring at your watch, I can't do it.
So we talked to this guy about breath work, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound, it sounds like something that we can do. And so he decided to do this session for us and for any of our audience that wanted to join in. And so we were each in a separate room. We just had my laptop open. He was thinking Hawaii, and he started going through this the steps, and he had this really intense music on, and then it's like a timed breathing. It was warrior breath work, so it's very fast breathing. But so you're like
In labor.
but it doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Right.
labor is more like.
But it surprisingly didn't tire me out, because I'm like, I'm going to pass out after 5 minutes. But you kind of get into your groove. But it was incredible. Like I was like, breathwork, what's this going to be? I had an out of body experience. It was amazing.
Hypoxic.
Probably. Probably. But regardless, it was incredible. It was incredible.
But because you left your body, right? You saw you floated above your body. That's something that had never happened before.
Yeah.
I'm not skeptical that happened, and I'm not skeptical that you experienced that. I'm a little skeptical about when you manipulate the amount of oxygen and the rate of oxygen delivery. I just happen to know your brain does odd stuff.
Right. Well,
And that's not spiritual. That's science.
Well, no, and I agree. But I think you were going to say, how different is that from ayahuasca?
Exactly what I was going to say.
It's just a natural way to get to that same high.
Yeah, it's not the tool. The tool
Right.
is scientific. It's the effects of the tool that make it spiritual. And that's what we're saying. She had an out-of-body experience when she was using this tool.
Very cool.
And then how about the harmonic egg?
That was good too.
This may or may not, we cannot confirm nor deny that this might have just cured Karen and our daughter from COVID.
Oh, wow. A harmonic egg?
Harmonic
Have
egg.
you heard of them?
No.
Oh, they're very cool.
What's a harmonic egg?
It's an egg. So this woman out of Colorado she was an engineer, and she started studying healing with light and sound waves. And she created, it's an egg. It's a big egg, and it's made of very special wood. It has to be, I think it's olive wood. It has to be a very spiritual type of wood and very specific type of music. You can't use MP3 because the waves can't be compressed. It's very scientific. But you get in there and it's big. You can fit, there's a reclining chair in there. You can stand up and you can walk around the chair. So it's not like a claustrophobic thing at all. And then they close you in, and then there's different lights. They kind of talk to you about what you need, and depending on what kind of healing you're looking for, it'll change the color of the light or the type of music that is playing. So you're in this egg for about 45 minutes, listening to the music and being bathed in the specific light. And the first time we went in, it was just to see what it was like, so we could tell the audience, So I was like just kind of looking around, and it was nice. It was just, kind of relaxing, lovely little experience, but nothing really happened. And then my daughter and I both got COVID, and we have a blood situation. So it was a little more dangerous for us. And she got it before I did. And so then, Will, you were in contact with, was it Lynn or Terry?
Lynn, one of the ladies who owned the harmonic egg.
And she had said, well, we can do remote healing in the egg, which that to me, I'm like, super skeptical about that. And they're like, well, just give us a picture of your daughter, give her name, her birthday, some information. We'll put it in the egg and we'll have her go through a session. So I'm like, well, it can't hurt anything, right? So they do that. And she had a temperature for about 3 days. And we couldn't, no matter what we gave her, we could not bring it down.
And not just a temperature, a really high temperature, like 104, 105 kind of deal.
She wasn't quite that high.
It seemed like she was 127 for me.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was like probably like 102, 103.
It's terrifying though when somebody's temperature when they get that febrile, that is very concerning. It's very terrifying, and
especially because we couldn't get it down.
Yeah, no matter what we gave her.
And her oxygen levels were dropping below 95, and we were concerned.
Yeah, as well you should be. That's everybody's okay now.
Yeah, well, within 24 hours, her fever was gone, and she was running around the house feeling fine.
That's fantastic.
So then they put my picture in the egg, and I'm kind of watching TV. I fell asleep during my session, and I woke up, and it was still during the session. My whole body was like vibrating, and 24 hours, my fever was gone, and I felt fine. So 2 weeks later, I took my sister. She was visiting, and she's always wanted to try out an egg. So I'm like, let's go to the egg. And while I was there, they said, we want to put you back in and try to detox you because you probably have some leftover COVID stuff. So they put me in the egg, and this time it was totally different than the first experience. I started shivering, freezing cold so hard that the chair I was in was rocking.
Wow.
And I got out of the egg. It's the middle of the summer, 85 degrees, and I'm sitting outside with a fleece on, drinking hot tea, and I could not warm myself up. So I came home, and I'm like, well, I might go lay down for a little bit. And Will's like, well, let's take your temperature. I think it was like 100. So I'm like, that's nothing. So I go lay down, and he comes in back up in an hour, and it's 102. But I felt fine. I was just kind of cold.
Right.
So then he comes back in about another hour, and it's like 104.5.
Yep.
Wow.
Like, we're taking you to the hospital. I'm like,
yep.
Yes.
Fine. I'm like, I'm not, nothing. I'm just tired and a little cold, but I feel fine. So by midnight, the fever was gone. And the next day I woke up feeling better than I have felt in years. Like incredible.
Yeah.
So.
And apparently it was a big detox that this harmonic egg did, but they've had incredible stories, like an autistic kid who was nonverbal, who went in there with his mom. And when it came out, he was talking after that.
Yeah.
Wow.
They've got incredible stories, but these are some of just a couple that have made us go, okay, there's something here.
Don't know what it is, but something happened.
Can't explain it.
I mean, it could be a coincidence. Yeah. Could be, but I don't know.
It's hard. And folks can tune into your podcast and hear about this.
Yes.
Absolutely. We've got an episode on harmonic egg. We got an episode on the breath work. We got an episode on the medium.
Hypnotherapy.
The channel, yes.
Yep. Yeah. We have the hypnotherapy. Yep. Oh gosh, we should talk to her about the reverse speech.
Or Bigfoot.
Or
we're going to take up all her time. She's like, I gotta go, people.
Yeah.
No. We're good. And funny thing about Bigfoot is I honestly wonder sometimes in this day and age when we've got the kind of face recognition, digital, amazing cameras, why all the pictures are still blurry. I'm not 100% convinced that somewhere out. I lived in Washington State briefly. It's a delightful place. It's one of the most beautiful scenery I think I've ever seen on any place in the planet. And any bar, it's just like any bar in New Jersey, you're going to hear a story about somebody running into either John Bon Jovi or Bruce Springsteen. Any bar in Washington State, you're going to hear somebody's story about how they saw Bigfoot.
Right. Well, the reason why the pictures are all blurry, right? Because they come whenever they know that their picture being taken, they do this. They shake their head really fast. Sorry.
Oh my
God. Can't see that.
Dad jokes even on this.
Yeah. I'm always wondering if somebody just says, well, it's Ed's turn this weekend to put on the suit because there's like this tall family that drinks a lot and they just want to go out. And
I wouldn't doubt it, especially after we talked to this guy. But apparently he's had a relationship with the whole Bigfoot family or Big Feet family, whatever you want to call it. But and he played some grumblings or growls or whatever that he's recorded throughout his years on our show, which is really interesting.
Well, like that sounds kind of like it could be you.
I mean, it sounded like it totally was him. but the other ones were a little bit more
Yeah.
harder to explain. But he has a really interesting theory as to why
Yes.
people haven't found them.
And that actually makes it oddly more believable
For
even
you,
though it's,
right?
even though it's more out there. I'm like, oh, okay.
Right. Right.
So folks need to
Uh,
listen in to find out the secret of
I don't want
Bigfoot.
to spoil it.
Right, but
Oh,
I
that's
still
mean.
like I think but the thing I always thought was interesting is that it's not confined to the Pacific Northwest. There are
It's not.
Bigfoot sightings and Bigfoot cryptozoological creatures. I mentioned when we were off air that my better half grew up in Florida, where it's a skunk ape.
The
And
skunk ape. Yeah.
yeah, you know,
Yeah, we talked about on this show the reason why Bigfoot's called skunk ape in Florida is because it's so damn hot. Their fur's matted down. They stink like skunk.
yeah.
Once in a while, you drive through that smell in Florida.
Yeah.
You do. You do. I lived in Ocala, and I used to
Oh.
drive on the clay road to get to the back end of where I lived. And
You know the
man,
smell.
yeah. And that I thought somebody left a tailpipe in the road until it slithered away.
Ah,
That's
yep.
when I saw a king snake. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, well, now that's large.
Yeah.
And and I'm not particularly funny about snakes, but I didn't want to investigate.
I'm
So-
not a big fan of snakes.
That's crazy.
But this reverse speech guy, we won't take up any more of your time after this.
Don't worry.
This guy, remember back in the 80s when the moms were all up in arms because people were playing records backward? Yes, exactly. Right. Sweet Satan, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, right? Well, apparently that's a thing.
You're wrecking your record. You're wrecking your record.
That's more likely than what it should have been saying, right? But this guy from Australia has actually dedicated his life to poring over hundreds of thousands of recordings and finding these reverse messages. And he played a ton of them on our show. And oh my God, like now we question whether had he not said something to us first, if we would have heard it as clearly as we did, because he would say, well, this one says blah, 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 blah. And he'd play it and we go, oh my God, it totally does. Right.
Well,
But
that's like
his
when they do
theory
those
is,
things on the ghost show with the ghost box. You hear,
yes,
and then he says, "Oh, look, it said your name." I'm like,
yes. But
What?
this, honestly,
You could actually understand it.
That's what you
there was
can,
no
okay.
there was no question that this was what it was being said. But was interesting is his theory is that when we are talking to each other, we're talking to each other on two levels. One is this normal speech that we're talking, but because of the choice of words that we're using, the inflection that we're using, the rate of speech at which we're talking, when you play it backwards, it's our subconscious communicating with each other in a way that reveals nothing but the truth.
Wow.
So he played some politicians sound bites for us backwards, and you could tell it sounded to me an awful lot like they were actually saying things that we all know are now true,
Right.
which was super interesting.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and it foretold people like Jeff Case foretold his future, his death. His 6-year-old daughter who couldn't yet speak was telling him to
4-year-old.
4-year-old daughter who couldn't speak. That's right. They could probably, if they don't speak by 6, you're in trouble, right? But
4 seems
but-
late, but
yeah,
I'm not an authority.
right. But she was asking for help in the bathtub. I mean, you could hear all these things very, very clearly. It blew my mind, honestly. Reverse
That's
speech.
very, very cool. And I think that folks need to go ahead and listen. Like I even made some of my notes. I got to check out the lady who channels, the harmonic egg, reverse speech. Folks need to get on top of your newsletter so they won't miss anything. And also, I got to hear the Bigfoot thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now you're curious, aren't you?
I am. I'm foot
Yeah.
curious now.
Right.
Sci curious. But, it's there is a lot out there, and I thank you so much for all that you do to help folks kind of sort through it. And I think that, we've all had experiences, and I think the one thing is, some people say, well, you know what? I don't believe in ghosts, but if I saw a ghost, then I'd be like, okay, I just believe. It doesn't work that way. If you get a little proof, you want a lot of proof. If you get a lot of proof, you want empirical proof. If you get empirical proof, you want to tell everybody about it.
Yeah.
So, it's like becomes, it's never, it's not just you get this little morsel and then you're satisfied. This is the Lay's potato chip bag of stuff.
Right.
You want to get down to the bottom of it, and it's unending. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. And I'm so grateful that you're so tireless in what you do. Again, folks can go to your website at skepticmetaphysician.com. And they can also do the @Skeptic Metaphysician on Facebook, @Skeptic Metaphysician Podcast on the Instas. You can look up Will and Karen on social media and get on that newsletter and learn more. And what is something you want to leave us with?
Karen?
Oh, God. Just be open. Just be open, because you never know what's going to change your life.
Yeah, I would say with the advent of the advances that have been made in the research of quantum physics, sky's the limit, man. Things that people said was cockamamie a few years ago, now you can't really discount anymore as easily as you could before people started pointing to quantum physics. Because
I've often said that I don't think it's as much spiritual as I don't think the answers are with the Dalai Lama. I think they're with Einstein.
And yet, what if I told you that the Dalai Lama was actually tapping into an understanding of quantum physics that we weren't ready for yet?
I believe it.
I don't know that they have to be exclusive of each other.
No, that's what I'm saying. But people think it's got to be one or the other.
Mhm.
I think there's a whole lot of Einstein in with the rest of this too.
Oh,
I think
yes.
he was
For
on to
sure.
something
For sure.
that I don't understand. I'm going
Wonderful
to be the first one to tell you that.
Yeah.
It's only so much. Well, Will, Karen, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on, folks. You're going to find a live link in the description. You'll see it up on the splash graphic. Get in with what they're doing, and you will learn so much. And I want to thank you all for listening. And remember, stay kooky out there. Thank you for listening to Macabre World. You can find us on the web at www.darkerartsstudio.com.